YouTube?
I hope so. So I was saying I'm going like balls deep into Azure, like so. Hopefully, I could be able to document my journey and have some social proof. So I think that's what's important nowadays.
Something
So
to load into Nicaza?
yeah. So when's the last time we've been live? It's
It's been
been
months.
3 months. Yeah, I think it was August 1st. I can't do math. August is month eight, so 4 months ago. Whatever. Yeah, crap. So
Back
anyway,
before I was retired.
yeah, I'm still trying to get you to like get out of your plateau. Did you um did you entertain any new ideas?
No, man.
Okay. Why you put your head down like?
Life's so exhausting. I don't know.
Oh,
You're a Azure Service Bus guru now, I suppose.
I'm I'm soaking it in, and it helps when one of your mentors is a MVP and a certified architect for Azure. So, but I just have to limit the amount of times that I call him, or else he's not going to answer my phone calls anymore. But I talked to him a couple of days ago for like an hour.
Cool.
Um, yeah, I have something to run by you offline. But anyways, so this past week I've been onboarding with Azure Service Bus, learning a lot, and swapping out my my makeshift. Uh, I'm getting distracted, and swapping out my makeshift uh, service bus that's handcrafted that talks to SQL to now swapping that out for Azure Service Bus, and that's talking to some queue storage stuff. So I'm using like this topics and subscriptions paradigm and using Azure Functions to drive that. So essentially, for every historical event that occurs for a customer requesting a delivery, I basically broadcast that event to subscribers such as my event store, as well as for my admin app that I'll have. I'll get notifications when a customer request is made, and if 0 couriers are found, I'll have everything toggled on, probably for the first like month, if I get any orders whatsoever, just so that I can observe the historical events and workflow, and then freak out when something's stalling and not working out. So like one subscriber to these historical events, when a customer says that they're hungry and they want food, is my event store. That's the ledger, right? It's going to record every historical event within that pipeline. The other one is my admin app that I'm just going to get notifications, and I'll put in a ringtone, a cha-ching or some type of like cash register ringtone whenever there's a successful transaction. And those are the two main. Oh yeah, and then the customer app, they'll have a subscription as well. And all this is our subscriptions to Azure Service Bus. So it'll push notification is like a mobile term, but it'll push messages to clients instead of me polling. So in up until now, I was just polling periodically, even the bots that I built. So I think you remember the conversation of when I created several bots to simulate the handling of a customer order. So I would like literally put in a customer order, run my bot service, and there's 3 bots that are within the pool, and they would, whichever bot takes it, they would process it and then return results. And so I plan on wiring that up as well. I sound pretty smart, don't I? Like, I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, you got all the buzzwords in the right places.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I just have to say microservices, uh, monolith. What's the blockchain? I think I'm missing something else, but that's it. When am I going to have all this wired up? I'm thinking probably take a couple of weeks with my 2 hour a day quota on this project. Hopefully, in 2 weeks, I'll have the entire integration part swapped out. It based on Service Bus. That's not talking about the actual like mobile push notifications, which I learned that I guess so Azure has Azure Notifications Hub, but I think that's the name of it. Hold up, let me type it in. Azure Notification. Yeah. So Azure had a Azure Notification Hub service, but like the videos are from like 5 years ago. So I'm like, I don't think this is current. But their website wasn't retired, but their documentation had a timestamp of like 5 years ago. But it appears that what do you call it? App Center has a mobile push notification service, and that seems to be current, and that's what's being tutorials and Xamarin, or they have like YouTube videos on that. So I'm going to do that, and it's a combination of App Center notifications with the dependency of using Google's Firebase, I think is the name of it, so that I could talk specifically to Android. And then whenever I start iOS development, then I'll use whatever integration piece that iOS provides, but still use App Center notifications to integrate with that. That's not going to be 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away is just me hoping to be done with the Azure Service Bus integration. I don't know if you've been looking at my tweets, but I've been learning a lot from the community. I didn't realize that. Did you know GraphQL has a subscription support?
I did not. No.
Yeah. So I don't know. Moving forward, not this project, but maybe something else. I'll probably use that instead of REST. But that's what's going on with me. I want to get this done. I want to stamp this on my resume. I want to bill at $125 an hour as a quote unquote solutions architect.
Azure why not shoot for $200 an hour?
Because I don't feel like I can convince people to pay me that much, especially if I haven't demonstrated that yet. And I think I would have to be confident to charge that much. I don't know if you're being like if you're being sarcastic or not, but
no, I don't really know what higher end architects charge. I know software developers that charge in the over $100 range or so.
The most I billed was $110, and that was for like 3 months. I'm trying to graduate, man. The more you know, the more you demonstrate, which means that the more you can help others, the more you should be worth. This is me venting now, but technical staffing firms that know nothing about software, if they even have degrees, they have degrees in communications and psychology. Like, they don't really understand that stuff. So all I have to say is blockchain, Azure, AWS, and like they'll immediately start scheduling me for interviews that are like $150 an hour, as long as I could wear a suit and say it at the same time. But I'm done venting.
That's so good. No, I've caught a couple of your tweets anyways. The one on the service bus one I responded to, but I didn't see the rest of them. So
Oh yeah, when I posted,
Why not switch them all?
yeah, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is theoretically this is going to solve my same. This is going to solve my problems, but the benefit is I don't have to poll for a status update. Why why aren't people doing that? What am I missing? I mean, I'm not a back end engineer. I'm not. I mean, I do it, but that's not what I'm gainfully employed to do. My focus is UI development for mobile, and it used to be desktop. And so I'll scratch my head like, what am I? Why aren't people bragging about using a service bus to push notifications? And then you guys commented back, and it sounds like you guys kind of agreed, but it's based on the context. So if you just have a typical website that's not doing any like workflow type transactions, then it's just not required. But for what I'm doing, it is. So
yeah. Any kind of like complex system should have probably messaging at its core. So like, I don't, the ones I've done are like when you submit an order off, usually the like an e-commerce website or something isn't going to be the one that's going to fulfill that order. So you pass that off through a message. But there's a lot of stuff that in your app could be probably spun off to messaging buses. It's just not everything, obviously, but a lot of it. So
I mean, definitely the order request fulfillment workflow. Um, but yeah, I agree. So there's some things like uh, registering a bank card. I don't see a story where I would need a service bus for that, because it's not significant. It's a requirement for when you actually do order eventually. But I mean, yeah, I'll keep web API for that. But the guts of the application is requesting something and tracking it. So,
yeah, I mean, anytime you've got someone sitting there sending a request, it's like, do they need to know about the response? Do they need to know what happened when you handled it, or is it something you can kind of pass along or not, and just kind of fire and forget about it? So yeah, it's all contextual. It's all depends on the scenario, but a lot of the scenarios, and you were talking earlier about, I have the request come in and I post it to these 3 services to do it. It's like push that to one topic, and then have 4 consumers pull that off, and you're good to go. You just have to make sure you do all the configuration and everything right on the service bus to make sure you don't lose messages. But
yeah.
yeah, it's, I mean,
Hence me saying 2 weeks, which is if I'm doing 2 hours a day, I can't do math. 14 and 2 is 28, right? 28 hours. So
yeah. You ever read through the Patterns of Enterprise Integration book at all?
yeah, I have the book in my closet.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. So
That's Martin Fowler, right?
yeah, I think it is. It's one of was it the Addison Wesley or whatever, the red and black books?
I remember
Sitting down there.
I remember reading that book when I was in Seattle, living in Seattle doing a contract, and I remember being at a Starbucks just in the morning, just consuming that book. There's like Seattle's like a tech hub, so like
Yeah.
some young Asian dude like walked over to my table. It's like he didn't even like say excuse me. He like grabbed my book, looked at the cover, like he's like, oh, that's a good book. I'm like, thanks. So, I mean, anyways, yeah.
Cool.
Do you think it's still relevant though?
Sort of. I mean, it describes the core like
Patterns.
terms and patterns you need to know. But there's things like different patterns for messaging. Gosh, I can't remember. There's 2 like competing patterns
Right.
where, yeah.
Give me 5 seconds. I'm gonna see if I can find it.
Now for the Sean Alone Hour. Hi, everybody. As you can see, Scott's gone and looking for his book.
So, how many people can actually do that?
I can do that for that one. So I think I can anyways. I know it's down there somewhere.
Here's my presidential suite. You remember Encyclopedia Britannica, right? So here's my presidential suite of the publisher's books. So my favorite is X unit test patterns.
Yeah, that one I don't have. So
this is the reason why I am who I am, and I kind of like blow off steam when I'm at shops because they're not proving that their code works. And it's like, it still amazes me how much of a paradigm shift it is for mainstream programmers that are paid to automate, but they don't know how to like write a basic unit test. Anyway, this right here, this is weird.
Yeah, that'd be it.
No, I don't think that's it. You're not talking about this book.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's application architecture. Yeah, message. Yeah, integration patterns. Yep. Yeah. That's the one. So
I haven't looked at that book in a while, though, like several years.
But yeah, I remember there being things like a lot of this stuff is foundational, just understanding about, how messages work and correlation IDs and consumers and producers and the various components. But I remember there being talk of different patterns and alternate patterns you can use, and trying to think of them like you can do there's like competing patterns where if you can publish something and then you'll have like a front end a filter on things, and that's the same as this other one, but there's trade-offs. And so I think there's still some relevant. I mean, understanding the basics of it is.
I don't know if you can see it, but they have it looks like maybe 100 different patterns on here.
Yeah, some of them are foundational.
Channel adapter, content filter, message store, message mapper, normalizer. Maybe it's worth me looking at this again.
Yeah. I mean,
they put time into this book. I bet you they probably took maybe a couple years to write this book. Like it was so detailed.
Yeah. I remember going through it, and it's a dense book, and having to read it a few times over each of the patterns and things, and going through and trying to understand them and then relate them back to the thing I was working on too at the time. So, but yeah, it's I don't know. It's a good book. But have you done work with message buses before then at all?
No. For learning, I would like create my own and actually like deploy to production, and then my contract would be up and I would just leave. But I've never used like a
real one,
a vendor proven service bus, just because based on the type of work that I needed, it wasn't really a huge requirement. It was more of me wanting to understand that paradigm and understand what not to do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I've worked with Azure Service Bus, but I've worked with Rabbit as well and Tibco, and they've all got cool things about them. But I don't know. It's a fun. It can be fun thinking about messaging and setting up those structures and building something where a message is going to get from A to B. So. But
yeah, what I didn't realize, especially talking to one of my mentors, was so remember BizTalk server?
I never worked with it, but I remember it.
Yeah, so I remember like maybe 6 years ago looking at so I'm driven by money, right? And I remember like 6 years ago just researching how much certain developers make, and I saw a BizTalk server and it was like $125 an hour, and I'm like, so I immediately started buying all these books on Amazon on BizTalk server. I'm like, I'm about to get certified in BizTalk server. But make a long story short, I learned that Azure Service Bus is the successor or the next generation of that product. And so I didn't really think of it that way. But I learned that it's a modern version of that. So,
I thought it was more of a modern version of MSMQ, but I thought BizTalk was more of like the orchestration bit of it. Unless that's all built in Azure Service Bus. I don't know how deep ASP gets, but
so and maybe I'm miscommunicating this. Maybe I misinterpreted it. So what he was telling me was Azure Service Bus, and I was surprised. He was saying that it was also a replacement for Windows Workflow Foundation. I'm like, well, I thought that was Logic Apps on Azure. I don't know if you remember Workflow Foundation.
That editor where you can do the whole I remember it. It was dense.
But to what you're saying, there's also Azure Durable Functions, and maybe I'm confusing that. So with Azure, does that sound familiar to you? Azure Durable Functions?
Well, I know what Azure Functions are.
Yeah. So
durable functions, just rating off of a durable queue or something, or subscription or what?
No. What they should probably call it Azure Saga Functions, because it's dealing with asynchronous functions that run a long time, right? We're not talking like several seconds. We're talking about minutes, hours, or days. So you may think about like a mortgage company, in which the process for buying a house, I never bought a house, but I would assume that it's probably a couple weeks or something.
Yeah.
And so maybe, but that's kind of like it has like some orchestration engine in it, with some like historical execution plan. I'm sure I'm butchering the terminology. So maybe, I don't know, there's so much crap in there that I'm sure I'm misusing, aka abusing terms, and there's other tools that are doing what I'm saying a different tool does. I'm still learning all this.
Yeah. Well, I know that makes sense though. That because, like I said, I was thinking BizTalk was more like what you described with, not necessarily durable, the durable function thing, but that kind of deal where it was more of an orchestration tool. Like you receive this message and you need to route it to here, and you needed to also send it off to an email service or something like that. I worked with a tool called Tibco. What was it? Tibco BusinessWorks, I think is what it was called. And BusinessWorks, you had this kind of like drag and drop interface where it started, generally most of the time started with like a queue that you would receive information on. Then you might do something like transform the data and then pass it off to like a service to do some work, and then send the message off to an email service to do some work, and then some other services, and then you would transform it again, store it to a data store, or whatever you needed to do it was more about once this message gets passed in, what's the workflow behind it, or what flow needs to happen with that message to kind of process it. So
yeah, I think it's the same thing as BizTalk Server, right? Because the BizTalk Server, you essentially have in the middle of your hub, you have your master document that's the standard of your XML schema, and you have you have different companies or vendors that are sending you messages that are in the form of XML that may or may not comply with your XML schema master. And so then you have these functoids, I think is a term, that you can use to transform their XML documents, meaning that you transform some of the element names or some of the attributes, and transform all that to comply with your master schema. And then once you have your standard product from that transformation, then you run it through some process, and then you transform that and spit it out to some other channel. Like I was digging deep into it, but I never practiced it professionally.
Yeah.
It's like $125 an hour, I'm on it. So
Yeah, we talked about trying to implement the whole canonical data model thing. That one of the companies I worked for was doing messaging, and instead of using straight up XML like we should have and having schemas and stuff like that, the architects at the time decided that they were going to generate their own kind of like generic structure inside of XML, um,
so it
which
has
is a
C
step
data
back,
sprinkled everywhere.
huh?
Did it have C data tags sprinkled everywhere?
Oh, it was no, it was awful. So it was like you had the outer tag was called request, and then you had the request parms, which were like the first layer of simple structure stuff. So those had a key and a value, which why would you ever do that when XML is already key value based? I don't know. But you had a collection of those. And then they originally did that and like this is what we'll need. It's just that. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're forgetting about anything that's done simple. Like if you have a complex data structure, you need to have some sort of recursive structure to support that. And so then then we had it was so awful. It went like compound request parms, request parm compound. It was like 5 layers deep till you actually got to the next level where you needed to be. It was awful. And so we spent probably I'd say over the course of years probably 5 million like millions of dollars trying to work around this god awful structure that these architects came up with.
And they probably left, and
I think they eventually got the bye bye from them, but yeah, it was one of these things where we spent. I mean, I spent literally myself because you couldn't use any standard serialization libraries with it because you couldn't serialize to XML and then just send it, which is easy. You had to serialize it into this structure that was built out of XML. And so like I spent writing in C, I had to write C code to do this. And I spent just months and years probably working around that. And then Tibco, like the tool that we were using, the BusinessWorks, I mean, you would try to, like, if you were doing strict XML, you could transform stuff like nobody's business. But here we had to like extract every single key value using XPath queries out of it and yeah. Oh my God, it was awful. It was
sounds like my Visual Basic days.
Yeah, it was like at the start of that whole thing when I was first getting comfortable, I'm like, yeah, I want to be an architect one day. And then I realized how bad the architects were, and I was like, oh God. And then I was shy about it when I went to my next gig. Like I was afraid that all the architects in the world were just awful. And so then when I got one that wasn't, I was like, I was really cautious every time I tried to come up with an idea and something. I'm like, he's just going to bat this down, and go, no. So I'm better now, but it did some real damage.
I thought I was the only person that had bad luck with companies. The thing is when you find a group of people that you like gel with, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like you're not frustrated. You don't scream at your mate. like everything is cool. But when you're on a bad team, or when you just work with like just shitty people and they don't realize it, and you try to help them, but they know better than you, like that's the way they feel. People still argue. Like a lot of like people like tell me, no, Scott, you need to learn how to deal with those situations, and don't just quit. And I'm like, man, my life is short. I'm already halfway through it. Like I don't have time to waste entertaining things or tolerating things. Like if we don't share the same vision, and if they're not a fit for the values that I have, why am I going to spend another 6 months or another year, like, I don't know, sacrificing my mental state? Like just move on. Like I learned from Obama, man. Like I used to think there was a specific path to that you had to graduate from step to step to step to be president, or to have a certain status. No, you don't. you work the system, right? You let other people be obedient to the system, and that's fine for them. But you don't have, your time is limited. It's something you never get back. So if you find a way to shortcut and go straight to the top, then you just do it, right? And people can continue to say it's not fair, but they're complaining while you're already there. So it's whatever. That's
Cool.
a tangent.
Life advice from Scott.
Well, you mentioned how you worked in like technical environments that weren't working out for you, and the decision is, do you try to be a team player and go down with their ship, or do you say, I'm a business too, and I rather learn and respond and adapt than continue going down with a sinking ship? Like,
yeah, I mean, they weren't sinking by any means, but they certainly, there was a lot of opportunity costs that they were trying to rebuild their website, and they spent 5 years doing that before they decided it was finally a failure.
that's a sinking ship.
Yeah. But the thing is the business, they kept running though,
Okay.
and they did well, and they're doing well. Not for the help of them, but for their own, just their business model is otherwise good. So, but yeah, the I don't know. I had an interview once, and they were talking about I knew the interview was going to be dead after like a few minutes into it when they asked me a question about something, and I responded with well, I knew that we shouldn't be using these things, but the architect was there, and I was a junior developer, and I've got a family, and what am I going to do, kind of a deal, and their kind of their philosophy was do the right thing always, and kind of was fuck the consequences or whatever, just kind of a deal. So as long as it's the right thing. No, I was too. I had too much of a Minnesota nice attitude where I didn't want to step on people's toes and etc. But this is a California company. But still, it's after that, I've thought about it, and it's like, what? There's no way nowadays that I would sit there and there's stuff I'll tolerate, but I would never go back to a point where it's such an incredibly bad technical decision. I don't think I would stick around with it. So, but I don't know. I rail a lot about architects nowadays and stuff still. So I just hate when any sort of, I really just hate centralized power structures in software development in general.
I hate when the person that's making the decisions don't have hands-on experience with it. So
yeah, that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
So I mean,
skin in the game.
I mean, I'll drop names, right? So when I was at FedEx, this architect, he didn't know how to code, right? But he has all the confidence in the world, and he's talking about the strategy. We're building a mobile app. He's never built anything mobile. And we're talking about building in quality. And he's like, no, we need to write unit tests for everything. We need to unit test private functions or private methods. And I called him out. I'm like, why would we do that? And then everybody looked at me. And I'm like, private methods are the implementation details of methods that are publicly exposed. And so you're going to be testing private methods just by testing the publicly exposed methods. And so that would just be a waste of time. It just got really quiet. But I mean, it was a prime example of a person put in the position that were picking all these tools that weren't relevant for the project that we were working on. But you could tell that it was political, and they just wanted to pad their resume with it. And so building a standard line of business application that's straight CRUD operations, but we're using reactive extensions. But it's a CRUD app. There's no streaming of events that's happening. It's point and click, and you go to the next page, point and click, go to the next page, then hit finish. But we're having to build all this infrastructure of these third-party library dependencies. And I used to vent and say, can someone please articulate what problem this is solving? And no one would do it at all. I don't know, that was one experience I just got fed up with, because it's like, you're making my job harder. I'm billing you at like freaking $95 an hour, and you're not listening to me, the one who's actually doing the work. You're listening to someone that is so detached, that has no clue what the implementation details are, and they're not the one that have to live with this. So eventually that project got dropped or abandoned, and it sucked. It always sucks when you have a project that never makes it to production.
Yeah.
So that's me venting again.
Well, that's all I seem to do nowadays. So, no. I don't, in my retirement, so.
What keeps me happy is working on my own hobby projects. So I could make as many decisions that I want, realize that some of those decisions are not ideal, document what I've learned on my blog, and then keep it moving and just keep on climbing and reach, I don't know, problems that I usually would never get to if I never would have started at the basic foundation. So I'm done.
Cool.
Are you gonna make a decision on what you're gonna focus on, or you already made your decision, you're retired?
No, I'm waiting for something to hit. I don't know. Just everything seems like so much. I mean, I'm fairly content right now with where I'm at, but I don't know. I'm only content as long as I can keep busy at something at work. As soon as they run dry on interesting work or I guess work that's defined and stuff like that, and I start to get a little annoyed and just want something else. So, but I don't know. I think most of my move towards anything entrepreneurial has been trying to get away from something than trying to get towards something. So I'm waiting for something that I want to get towards to actually show up. But I don't know. It's been.
Have they? This is taboo. It shouldn't be, right? Just like prohibition in the 1930s or whatever. Has Minnesota been entertaining the idea of legalizing marijuana?
I don't know. Well, sort of. I think that they had it maybe a small amount of stuff. They've expanded the medical use more in Minnesota, but they haven't. They're still kind of holding on to the no, maybe not kind of a thing. So I don't really know. I think it should be, but I don't know why it isn't.
So here's the thing. So I'm trying to plant a seed. I'm trying to give you a project. So federally, regardless of some of the states that have legalized it, is it California, Washington State, Colorado? Is that accurate?
I think Nevada, was it Nevada, Maine, Colorado, and California? I thought California was only medically, but maybe they aren't.
Okay, so there's a small percentage of states
Yeah.
out of the 50 states that have legalized it.
Washington,
This is software based, right?
yeah.
So the thing is regardless of it being legal in a particular state, your banks are not going to work with you, because banks are going to comply with federal regulations, and it's not in their interests to have federal regulators on their tail, even if they're doing things by the book. They don't want to attract that type of attention. So that said, just like prohibition, the prohibition era, like cannabis is going to be legal eventually. And I would say within the next 20 years, it's going to be legal federally.
Yeah.
Okay. It's going to be legal. All right. So with that said, the caveat, or in software, we want to remove the pain, right? That's the whole point of building software. You want to remove the pain. You want to automate something. If banks are not willing to work with cannabis companies, hence distributors, right? And the whole management of profiting and that whole industry, then maybe an online bank should be created that's analogous to cryptocurrency exchanges. In this case, you're building you're building an online bank that is willing to do business with the cannabis industry in legal states.
Yeah, to do that,
it's going to explode. Period. Yeah, how do you build? How long does it take to build an online bank? Well, I'm sure depending on the rules. I mean, I don't think it's going to be FDIC insured, right? Maybe we should put a strike through the term bank and call it an exchange, right? Just like a currency, a cryptocurrency exchange.
There's a lot of investors though in that area. Banks will get on board, but they don't need it because there's, from the investment angle, there's tons. But you need capital to start a bank, because you have to have money in order to loan out, which is how you make money, and you need to have people to come in. It takes moolah to start a bank like that. But there's crowdfunding opportunities and stuff like that already existing for stuff if you couldn't get conventional loans.
So GitHub has if we're talking about that, so you gotta let me know if you got to go or not.
I got 10 minutes.
So I learned a couple of days ago, there's a MSNBC YouTube episode that ran a couple of days ago talking about open source software. And what I learned is GitHub has a GitHub sponsors feature. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't. I thought that was like, I got to figure out how to make money off of that. So the reason why I mention that is, okay, if you build an online bank for the cannabis industry, or for any industry that is legal in some areas but still frowned upon, and it's probably going to be frowned upon for another like 2 decades until old people die, then maybe one way that it could be funded is having various streams of crowdsourcing, one being GitHub sponsors, another one being, what was it called? Rocket? I forgot the other platforms. I want to say Rocket something. But whatever crowdfunding platforms exist, if they have investors and they want this type of infrastructure to be set up to entertain a probably a $30 billion industry. I don't know.
I don't think that there's any problems with right now with getting money in the cannabis. There's so many investors ready to just. It's a huge money making grab, right? And you're talking about as if like you go back to yesterday and say alcohol is illegal and now tomorrow it might not be. That's it, and people will drink it. It's like, why wouldn't you invest in it as much as you can? It's just you have to be comfortable with being kind of an early adopter. But there's a lot of people with a lot of money that are just throwing at it because they can. I mean, and why not? You're gonna probably, like you said, make bank on it if you get in right now. Once it's fully legal across the board, you're rolling in it. So.
I'm sure banks are probably working with porn companies. I don't think a cannabis company is as bad. Seriously, I live in Miami. There's like studios down here, and I'm sure banks are working with them.
Yeah.
So there you go. Merry Christmas. I just gave you a project.
I'll start my blockchain Azure Service Function Bus Delegate Service Pack Xbox Service Pack 1. Community preview.
There you go.
Bank, Patreon.
You forgot to say Akka, but yeah.
Akka, yeah, Akka.net. .net core.
I'll look into it. I know that's something that like one person isn't going. Well, no, because Elon Musk and his brother, was it not his brother that created what was he famous for before he became a billionaire? PayPal, right? Was PayPal not written by 2 people?
I'm not sure who. I know Elon Musk was involved with creating PayPal, but I don't know who was all. There was a
Yeah,
bunch of people I thought, or maybe that was eBay. I can't remember. There's eBay and PayPal. Well, I think they're owned one by the other, whatever. But
I
there
thought
was a
PayPal
bunch
was
of
written
people who
by.
made a lot of money off of those.
I thought PayPal. I don't know. I thought PayPal was written by like a couple people, and then it got bought out, and then it went mainstream.
Yeah.
I mean, if that example is true, then you could do it. All right. So, all right. It's been real.
Yep. So this streamed out on YouTube then to your channel? Is that how it's set up?
It says it's live.
I guess I can go check. Oh, it says you're live.
No,
Oh yeah, there it is. Saga
no,
continues.
yeah, no one's viewing it. But yeah, on Twitter, I'll talk about building a cannabis platform, and I'm sure people will look at the video.
Sounds good.
All right, Sean, it's been real.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a good week. Maybe next week I'll get hit by the bug and be like, you know what? I've got this great idea. It'll be snowmobile delivery service to ice fish houses. So
I don't think you'll have any customers. But
I don't know. There's a lot of people out there in fish houses that really want a pizza. So.
Or your $1 million web page that we talked about last month.
Yeah, $1 billion web page.
There you go.
All right, Eddie.
It's been real. See you.
See ya. Bye.